Hi, Pat the podcast editor here. This week on the pod, we discuss arguably the greatest of the 3 R's, reading, as Lloyd talks his top books of 2022 that have helped him in the business world.
This completely changed the way that I now look at hiring people and working with people. Like, fundamentally, has had a huge effect on how I look at people when we're trying to build our team, people we work with.
And in his own personal life.
I don't think I've spoken about this publicly or even privately much, but it was what triggered me to start having some therapy for some behaviours around food. And
well, that book was the trigger.
yes, yeah.
So the next time you're in your local bookshop, remember one of Lloyd's suggestions. It may just change your life. Now, before we dive in, we'd like to take a second to thank our sponsors, Adobe Express. Adobe Express allows you to quickly and easily create standout social graphics, logos, flyers, and more on web and mobile. Click the link in the description to try Adobe Express today. Right, let's get stuck in. This is episode 128 of the Business Anchors podcast.
We're just a couple of business anchors. Welcome to the Business Anchors podcast. This jingle is slightly too long. This jingle is slightly too long.
So, Lloyd, what books have you learnt from this year, and what are your biggest takeaways?
Well, by this year, do you mean last year?
Oh, yeah, this is... Yes, last year, sorry.
Yeah.
2022.
Yeah, because I have to say, I haven't got through many books yet this year.
Yes, good point.
That'll be a short episode.
Books from 2022. How many books did you read? Do you actually know?
Yes.
Oh, you're going to get into that. Sorry, I'm
I
excited.
can tell you now. Get into it early if you want.
Go on then.
Well, do you want to guess?
10?
Oh, it's higher than 10.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Should I tell you?
Go on then.
26.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I would
That's
say
impressive.
listened to and read. Is a
Oh, that's not
mixture.
as impressive then.
But I would say, like years before that, on average, I'd say I read 1 book a year.
Yeah.
For the last decade, and I really actively tried to read/listen to more. And yeah, I'd say 1 every 2 weeks on average. That's a good. I'm happy with that. I would say 8 of them were in January last year.
Oh, you did the classic.
I really went all out, and I was saying to Sarah, my wife, she was taking the mickey at me because I was saying, you know what, I'm a reader, and I was kind of like, I was basing my identity around reading. For 1 month.
Bookworm.
Like, I just really enjoy. Yeah, you watch the TV, you watch Netflix, I'm going to read.
Yeah.
And that faded.
Yeah.
But I still continue to read a lot more throughout the year.
Before we get into the books, why do you read out of interest?
This year, as I said, I've really tried to read, and the main thing was when I was a kid, I used to get a lot of enjoyment from reading.
Harry Potter. You loved Harry Potter.
Yeah, I loved Harry Potter. So I wanted to kind of get that back.
Yeah.
And also, you may, if you've listened to the goals episodes we've done this year or last year or the year before, I said about using my time in a better way for myself. And I kind of said, I don't want to be endlessly scrolling on TikTok. I want to do things that are actually beneficial for my life. So a lot of the things I've read are things I've enjoyed, but also learnt from.
Interesting.
And I feel like they've really built up over this year of things that I'll take skills and knowledge and stuff into the future. Some of the books were pure enjoyment. Like, I haven't come out like, oh, I learnt so much.
Yeah.
But that's also a good thing, I think.
So what, I guess, to try and give some value to the listeners, because I'm guessing people that are listening or watching this episode are probably interested in discovering good books to read this year that are going to help them.
Yeah.
Should we go through, how many have you got? Or how many are you going to go through?
I believe do you want to hear something really sad?
Go on.
Every book I've read to or listened to, there's a notes thing on my phone. Same as I think you've taken the piss in a previous episode for the teas that I drank. I was giving them a score. I've done exactly the same for the books I've read. All got a score after I read them. And so I have picked out the 8 highest rated books of the year.
I'm excited.
And I'm going from 8 to 1.
Ah, this is brilliant.
Yeah, real.
Yeah, keep that retention of the listeners.
Yes. So you're not going to get the best one until right at the end of the episode. So it doesn't matter if you're going to be late for work, stay in the car. Keep listening to this episode. Don't be with your friends and family.
Okay.
But and it's a range of different kind of areas that I read about, by the way. I'm not like
Like
just,
London,
I
Kent.
love science fiction books, or I love books about health. So I've read and listened, self-help, finance, race, environment and sustainability, autobiographies, psychology, health, time management, technology. They're just some of the
You're
different
such a
types of-
well-rounded person, Lloyd.
I am a round person. Yeah, people said that ever since I was at school, actually. They shouted it at me sometimes.
So, coming in at number 8.
Okay, we're going to that. Cool. Yeah, let's throw the structure of the podcast out the window then. Let's not ask the questions you said you'd
Oh,
ask
God.
me.
Okay, no,
let's
no,
go in at number 8.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll ask the other questions near the end.
Yeah. I'll go back to those notes, shall I? I even
Sorry.
checked with you just before we started recording. Said, are you going to ask me those questions?
Yeah, I am.
You said yes.
We didn't say when,
Now the
though.
listeners know that this isn't completely natural. We have notes that we're referring to, and there's a structure to it. So
I
you've
was
ruined
going
the
to
magic.
the next natural sort of step.
The next natural step wasn't what we organised, was it? Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm completely happy, having a great time. All right? So, in at number 8, rated 7.7 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'd say anything over a 7 I really enjoyed.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Mm.
Weird one. So from this book, I learned, don't judge a book by its cover. Books. And this was Jimmy Carr, Before and Laughter, it's called, as in Jimmy Carr the comedian.
Yes. Yeah.
So weirdly, I listened to this one, and this was one that I was just going on a walk, and I thought, I'm just going to download something that I can just enjoy. Not going to learn anything.
Yeah.
This will be a laugh. Great. And actually, weirdly, I don't know if you've heard about this book. It's like a self-help book. It's not.
Oh, really?
It's not, he does tell stories about his life and stuff, but I wasn't expecting it at all. I suddenly started learning things from it, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is not what I signed up for.
The most important question for me, and I bet other listeners are wondering this, does he read the audiobook?
Yes.
Okay, that makes a huge difference.
That's something massive that I've learned about audiobooks, and now I kind of pick which books I
Yes.
read and which I listen to. I'd say anything that's read by the author in an audiobook, go for. If it's not read by the author, it's not as enjoyable.
It's usually
normally.
one of two people reading it. So it's the author, or it's an American person that sounds like that.
Yes.
Isn't it?
I've
It is.
stopped listening. I've even paid for books and stopped listening when I've
you're well
hated
off.
the voice of people. Yeah. Mate, I'm earning some dollar now. I paid $3.99 for a book, listened for a minute, thought, nah, don't care.
So that's interesting. So it's a self-help. So if you like, what kind of things is it helping you to do?
He still
or learn?
he still tells stories through his life, so it is slightly autobiographical. But because I didn't realize he in his mid-20s, he isn't someone that like just found success and has been successful his whole life. He was just working like a boring office job that he hated
Yeah.
for a number of years, and he was basically underachieving and he was unhappy, and then he wasn't.
Great.
So, but I'm not going to go into
No.
detail with this book. And really, it's just a recommendation of like, if you actually want something really enjoyable that you can learn from,
Yeah.
that was really good. But also, it's one of those very motivating. If you're currently thinking like, oh, other people are achieving loads of stuff and I'm not, he tells his story from completely average bloke. Because you
Right.
can imagine
Yeah.
Jimmy Carr, the way he looks like. You could
Yeah.
see him working in an accountant's or whatever and being and his kind of path, and he shares some really, I kind of respect him more after reading the book because he's genuinely a very clever guy, and I learned.
I've got an important question for you.
Yeah.
Can you try and do his laugh? Cool, well done, thanks.
That wasn't very good, was it?
Sound like a seal.
Oh, I accidentally did my seal impression. Sorry. Did you say his laugh? Oh, I'll do that another time.
Cool. Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
That's a curveball.
I'll go into more depth in some of these, but so second one, A Life on Our Planet, David Attenborough.
Okay.
By the way, next one after this one is a business book. If you're here for the business stuff,
Yeah.
this was rated 7.9,
Wow. Okay.
almost getting to 8 out of 10 now. The main thing I learned about this is it seems stupid that I learned this. There is no away. Does that sound cryptic?
That sounds very cryptic.
But in this, actually at the very start of this book, he talks about how we completely need to fundamentally change how we make things and use things, and using
throwing
materials.
things away. Is that the?
Yeah.
Is that what
So
it's-
you know when you throw things away,
Yeah,
and you
away.
put it in your bin. Like,
There is no
all
way.
that happens is someone moves it to somewhere that you can't see.
Yeah,
And I know this is just like, it's so simple, but it really clicked in my head. I was like, oh yeah, like you don't throw things. Someone just moves it to somewhere you can't see.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Well, it does over like thousands
well, yeah,
of
stuff
years.
that's biodegradable and stuff.
But yeah, it really made me think. It's weird, isn't it? Like, if you were made, if like we didn't have this thing in society where like, oh, we'll hide all our shit over there.
Yeah.
And someone will take it in a lorry and put it over there,
Yeah.
or we'll send it to another country and they'll burn it and it'll make us feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
If you just had to like keep all your stuff at the end of your garden or like in a room in your house,
In a room in your house.
it would kind of be, you'd be like, God, that stinks. That's probably bad. We just put all that stuff there.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh, I'm trying to grow veg in my garden, but it's leaching all like toxic stuff into the ground.
Yeah.
But because we just
it's-
put it somewhere where we don't see it, we're like, nah, it'll be all right. And just
Yeah.
the fact that there is no way, like everything you've ever put in a bin is, unless it biodegrades very quickly, which very few things do, it's still just somewhere.
I think there's a similar thing in the meat industry as well, where you see chicken breasts or whatever just on a shelf, and you disassociate that with like murdering an animal.
Yeah.
And I eat meat, so
Yeah.
you know, so do you because you're horrible. But like you learn to like, oh, that's just a thing in a packet that
We're
you disassociate.
so far from what happens now
Yeah.
that you just and what he was talking about is basically us, like we'd have to fundamentally change so much stuff, but changing the materials we use so that like they easily get reused. So you're, you know, like I don't know, you buy a piece of furniture and it's made that you replace that bit when it's not needed anymore. Rather than now, we
Chuck
make
the whole
all this
sofa away.
stuff and it's just designed that
Yeah.
whether it's a disposable thing that you throw away 10 seconds later or a piece of furniture you throw away 3 years later, they're not made to actually have more of a life cycle and go back into being useful. They're just made for us to put this place away that doesn't exist.
So this has made me think of something which I think I discussed ages ago. Is the whole thing around consumable products. Like I'm thinking of Nike trainers or any trainers,
Yeah.
or another big one for me is the Brita filter.
Yeah.
So I have a Brita filter at home, and it has a little thing that you press on the top, and it tells you when the filter's run out.
Yeah.
Now I've had the same filter for probably 2 years, and it
Right.
ran out a year and 9 months ago.
Yeah.
But the water still tastes the same, and it's like I feel like there's that like brands and companies want to encourage
As in
like
making things have a short
yeah.
life.
Surely Nike could invent trainers that never break.
Well, this is the tough thing. Most companies could make products that last longer than they do, but they would make less money. So this is why, like, in society, it needs like to change fundamentally.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely a business that's trying to make a profit will make those decisions. So we have
Yeah.
to change how the whole world works, basically. But yeah, really made me think about that. And it's like, if we can make Nike make their shoes out of things that we know. So, we know when your trainers run out, the heel comes off, and the heel, you chop it up and use it as an eraser for kids at
With some
school.
dinner.
Yeah. And the top bit, that's actually pigs like eating it.
Yeah.
I know it sounds stupid,
Yeah.
but there's things like that of like, what happens when this comes to the end
that
of
like-
its
yeah.
life?
Reusing, upcycling. Is
Yeah,
it kind of
exactly.
Yeah.
And like a simple way of looking at it, plastic disposable razors. It's just a thing you buy. It comes to the end of its life very quickly.
Yeah.
You put it in this place away that doesn't exist, and it's just on the ground somewhere. If we think more of like everyone has a razor thing that lasts their whole lifetime, and there's a very small bit that gets replaced, maybe just the metal blade, but we have
Yeah.
a universal razor thing that lasts 50 years, and we know it does,
Yeah.
and it's bamboo, therefore does something good with bamboo
Yeah.
after. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, cool.
Cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
moving on.
Nice.
Our first business book,
Yes.
The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni. It looks Italian, don't know if it is.
Okay.
This got 8 out of 10. This completely changed the way that I now look at hiring people
Yeah.
and working with people, like fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
Has had a huge effect on how I look at people when we're trying to build our team, people we work with. It's quite a short book, so if you're not into reading, quite easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
I actually read this one, didn't listen to it.
Yeah.
And the main thing I learned is it's got these 3 sort of personality traits that you should look for in everyone to make an ideal team player.
Yeah.
Someone that's going to work well with other people. And that's being humble, smart, and hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're humble and smart, but you're not hungry,
Mm-hmm.
then they call you the lovable slacker. So if you're not hungry, you don't have any desire to like perform a lot better and achieve great things. So like people like working with you and you're a clever guy or girl, but you're not necessarily going to help the team achieve great things because you haven't got that hunger. If you're missing the smart part,
then you're a bit buggered.
and you're humble and hungry, they call you the accidental mess maker. So like you want to do really good stuff and you're a good team player and you're humble and you don't have an ego, but actually you're in whatever field you're working in, you don't have the knowledge or the intelligence to do good things, then people are going to like you, but you're not going to be as useful.
Yep.
And then if you're smart and hungry, but you don't have the humble part, they call you like a skillful politician. And this is, I've previously worked with someone that caused big issues in this business actually previously, that didn't have the humble part. And I think they were fairly smart and they were hungry and really motivated to do things, but they weren't humble, and that caused some big issues. So if one person comes in with a big ego and isn't actually playing for the team and is playing for themselves in this game of life,
good they are,
like no matter how good they are or smart they are or how driven they are, it's going to cause big issues. And I really, when I first was reading this, I was like, yeah, that makes complete sense. You need to look for these 3 things, and if something is missing, and people can have more or less of these attributes, but if 1 or 2 of them is completely missing, like a really smart person that isn't hungry to achieve good things or isn't humble, so has this massive ego and doesn't care about the team, isn't going to be good enough if there's missing things. And that's really now when I'm interviewing people or looking for people to work with, it's been huge.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it makes sense because people are complicated, so it makes sense having some kind of process to think about the sort of personality you need to create someone that's going to be a great team player and really add to the team.
I just think also, just as a point to do with this, I think this just shows the importance of reading stuff. Like you as a manager, or the person that really identifies talent to bring into our company, understanding that, think of the compound value that our company is going to get by you making sure you're choosing someone who's based on those 3 areas that's going to have a positive impact. I think it's huge, isn't it?
And that's what I meant at the start of this podcast when I was kind of saying I've read for enjoyment, but also I'm like learning things, and I think that knowledge has really built up. Like already these books genuinely are having positive effects, and I know they'll be like cumulative over my life if I keep doing this. I really do think that.
Great. What's the next one?
Next one, Psychology of Human Behaviour, David Martin. This was rated 8.3. Quite a jump here. And this was an audiobook. And so the thing that I wanted, I'm not going to go into psychological stuff, just so you know. If you're into psychology, or if you're not, but you want an introduction to it, definitely listen to this one.
Yep.
But the learning point from this book is, if you're a good presenter or communicator, it can change everything for you, basically.
Yeah.
So the guy, this I downloaded this as an audiobook, but it's actually a set of lectures. And so it's a lecturer.
Interesting.
And it's 18 hours I listened to this for.
Oh my God.
So if you think psychology lectures for 18 hours, sounds shit, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I guess if it's interesting, it's...
But the guy that was doing you can tell he's an incredibly skilled lecturer. The way he delivered everything made it one of the best things I've listened to or read this whole year. And there was a podcast episode with Stephen Bartlett about a guy that was talking about...
is that the guy?
No, it's not him.
Not the guy.
But linking to the same thing,
communication, the importance
and he kind of said like communication is the most important skill for anyone on the planet, no matter what your goals are. And I really have thought that more and more recently, that you can be really skilled in anything, but if you're not good at communicating that to the world, you've spoken about this on stage, I think, and in podcasts and stuff previously, it's just such a skill. And I thought for this guy to keep me really engaged, like I was, like a book, they call it a page turner, where you like can't put it down. I was thinking excuses of how I could keep listening to this audiobook because it was so good, purely because he was so good at presenting the information.
I think this is such an important point. And the person I always go to with this is Rory Sutherland. When I heard him interviewed on the Diary CEO podcast, he communicates his ideas so eloquently.
Yeah, opposite to you.
Yeah, opposite to me.
Yeah.
And he backs everything up with examples. It's impossible to stop listening to him. I think this is a hugely undervalued skill in society now to do with everything. Because ultimately we're all trying to convince other people to listen to what we have to say to achieve something. If it's to like get hired, get promoted, give to charity, get customers, you're trying to get people to listen to you and want to do what you tell them to do. Being able to communicate your ideas in an eloquent way and get people to listen isn't something we're taught. Like, we're literally not taught that at school, are we?
And it's interesting that the biggest thing from this audiobook that I got wasn't necessarily, like, I enjoyed it.
What they were talking
and
about.
I did learn stuff, but
the way they were
biggest
delivering
thing
it.
I thought at the end, like, I've just listened to 18 hours and sometimes I'd listen for 2.5 hours and I'd be thinking, maybe I'll do something where I can listen to another hour.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Just one more point on that. I think this is why I think forcing yourself to get better at public speaking is hugely important. It's been hugely beneficial to me. And I don't mean you have to stand on stages in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Even just standing, suggest in your company to do like a lunch and learn or something and get used to communicating your ideas to people.
Even starting a podcast and getting used to communicating your points to a microphone and one other person or people filming you, I think that's been really useful for me personally. And I know obviously we take the mick out of each other. Sometimes we don't communicate our points very well, but this has been a huge thing where I've learned how it's funny because I'm not communicating it well whilst on that. But I've certainly improved how I get my point across effectively from doing this over and over again.
It's training that muscle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And even in for me, it's been like getting better at pitching ideas to customers. I've even listened in on you presenting concepts to clients. We've both improved because we've practiced and trained that muscle of delivering ideas and thoughts, trying to do it in a concise, clear way, not always doing it well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Next book. So weirdly, out of my top 8 books this year, it's my second self-help book from a comedian. Who'd have thought 2 of those?
What a niche, Lloyd.
Yeah, I know. What a niche. But this one really surprised me. So have an open mind here. Recovery: Freedom from Our Addictions by Russell Brand.
Okay.
So what I learnt here was to take time for self-reflection. So this book really makes it basically guides you through a process to really think about what you're doing. And it basically takes you through the 12-step recovery program from any addiction. And now he makes this very clear as well. You could be doing this for a very serious addiction that's having terrible consequences on your life, like drugs or alcohol or gambling. But also things that we may see in society as more trivial, of like, you may be addicted to exercise to a point where it's actually negative, or you may be addicted to food in some way, or that kind of thing. And he basically learnt from the 12 steps of the AA program that he's made it kind of more accessible. And because he's funny, it's easier to get into it. And he's very honest, and he's been through a lot of addictions. So it's very interesting hearing his stories and how it helped him.
Does he read it?
Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yes. And again, I wasn't expecting this from Russell Brand. If you read the reviews for this book, it's people saying, I hated Russell Brand before this, but this was absolutely amazing. Right. I never would have expected this from Russell Brand. Not a fan, but this book is amazing. So
nice.
It kind of made me think about self-reflection, even if you don't think you have a huge problem, of actually thinking about your behavior and what you're doing. And I don't think I've spoken about this publicly or even privately much, but it was what triggered me to start having some therapy for some behaviours around food and.
Well, that book was the trigger.
Yes, yeah, and addictions to food and like a very negative relationship with food that I've had over the years.
Yeah,
and that's still very much on a journey for me. And maybe we'll talk about it in more detail another time when I'm more ready to. But that made me have those therapy sessions, which has really got me on a good path. So having time to reflect about things, it's been really important for me this year. So. Yeah, that was really good.
On this niche of comedians and self-help, it kind of makes sense why they'd be so interesting to listen to, because comedians are brilliant at knowing how to captivate an audience and get them to listen.
Well, that communication thing we just spoke about with the previous book.
They're brilliant. They're
finding
masters at
something
it.
like a self-help book about addiction sounds like the least engaging or entertaining thing. But if you get someone who has been, their craft is engaging you and entertaining you, and then...
actually doing something that's of value as well. It's a winning combination, isn't it?
I do think, bit of a coincidence, self-help books from comedians. I doubt there'll be any in next year's list.
Yeah.
But,
Go on,
really
what's the next one, Lloyd?
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd.
That sounds incredibly boring.
Yeah. 8.5 out of 10. Oh, I just burped into the mic. Remember, be good at communication. So this... I'll be quick on this.
Yeah, please do. I'm joking.
This is a book, basically an autobiography about the Britain. Let me just read exactly how he describes himself. Britain's top forensic pathologist.
Yeah.
It's basically a guy whose job is when people die, he has to work out why they die.
Right,
stuff.
okay. Sounds like a horrible job.
Yeah, sounds horrible, sounds depressing. But what I learned from this, what I found amazing, to me it sounds like such a horrific job.
Yeah.
But his motivation to be like the best at something, you know, when something like that, it's like, oh God, he sees all these dead bodies and stuff. But you can tell by he's writing about his career, and it's a really interesting and entertaining book as well.
Yeah.
But you can tell he's so driven just to be the best at his craft. And I think that's really interesting. To hear from other people, and some people that think they might be in a more boring job role, or like, and people aren't interested in this, to hear something about basically working with dead bodies, and he's so like driven to be the best at it. Well, I thought was really interesting.
Nice.
There's also really weird stories about him like cutting into like a beef steak and stuff for like that's supposed to be for dinner, but because he's got a stabbing case on his mind, and he's like seeing how it goes into the meat and stuff.
Oh God,
really weird. I'm going to move on from that one, but that actually is a really interesting book.
Nice.
Next one, second to last one, The Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel, 8.6.
Oh, we're getting high now.
And if you're into finance, you'll like this one, but don't worry, you'll like it if you're not. Don't stop listening, please. And by the way, when I get to the end, it's got 2 bonus books. So don't stop listening again. All right?
Oh, for God's sake.
Okay.
We're really focused on retention here, as you can tell.
Yeah. And what I learned from here is we all have different paths to wealth. So, sounds boring. Not, honestly.
Keep listening.
Finance and investment, like learning and books and stuff, is often
Dry.
either very dry and boring, or basically like a textbook, or it's a guru trying to tell you to do something that they want you to do and buy a course from them, and it doesn't actually help you generate wealth.
Yeah.
It just makes them money, and they're basically taking the piss out of you. So this author is the first person that I've noticed acknowledging, like in finance, that we're all different people and actually should be creating wealth differently for ourselves. So those gurus always say their thing is how you should make money. Like, invest in property because I'm this property expert and you're going to make millions, blah, blah, blah. Or invest in crypto. I'm a crypto expert. Buy my course on crypto.
Yeah.
This person was acknowledging like all of our personalities. So property may be in the past the best way to generate wealth. So there's obviously, if you're into finance, you'll know these things, but like getting a house and then mortgaging it and getting the money out and refinancing and buying another one and renting it out, that can generate a lot of wealth. A lot of people think that that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But this author describes that we're all different people, and risky things like that, or things that take time, that may just make you personally, Dan, really stressed. Like, I don't know about property. Like, this is rubbish. If your whole life you're feeling stressed about something, what's the point of generating that wealth? So for you, it might be like actually just putting your money in stocks and shares, this boring account,
in crypto, and losing loads of money.
That may be the best for you personally because of your personality. And again, with like paying off mortgages, if say you inherited some money and you have the option to either invest it somehow or pay off some of your mortgage, like a lot of people in finance will be like, don't pay off your mortgage, no, invest it in this and this. Actually, if for you personally that's going to give you a really stress-free life and make you happy, you should consider that thing that makes you less wealthy.
Yeah, good point.
And yes, anyway, short book, really good for finance. If you know nothing about investing or finance and you want to, I would say read this book because it's a real like layman's terms and from a starting point, really good. And it's nice that people are actually thinking about empathizing with different people's personalities and stresses and feelings, not just like make money or do this thing.
Cool. So we at number one. The highest rated book.
Yeah, I feel like.
Do you know? I bet I know which book.
I feel like you're gonna laugh at me.
Is it Michelle Obama?
No, I didn't read that. I mean, if I read it this year, it would be. You ready for this?
Ready for this?
I read it before the controversy. Okay. Will by Will Smith. Number one.
I bought you that book.
You did.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, slapped someone on stage and stuff, and since I read it, it's got a bit controversial. But at the time, he was a lovely man, supposedly. But what I learned from this, I found it really interesting because I kind of grew up with Will Smith, so it's autobiography basically. And I didn't really know about his early music career and stuff, and that's interesting. So anyway, won't go into that. But what I really learned from it was from that early part of his career, and it's about not getting complacent. So I didn't realise Will Smith, basically, his first album, he was like the hottest thing. Oh, I sound like such a boomer. He was the hottest new thing and dropping some really brilliant tracks. And really successful, and basically got a deal for his second album. And because he had all this success and wealth and all these cool people around him, he basically his second album is really shit.
Oh,
and,
right.
Because he just wasn't bothering. He was just partying and focused on that. And he almost kind of lost it all when the career trajectory that's led him to being this superstar and in the films he's in and stuff. He almost lost it all because he kind of fell off a cliff and was like, oh, that's rubbish. And he kind of disappeared and he had to really build it back up. Yeah. And it was just interesting to hear that happened so early and then the work he had to do to get it back. And I just thought, even if you feel like you got a good thing, you should never take it for granted and keep working at it and not get complacent.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I think remember when we, in the early days, when we like won a new big client, we'd like celebrate and be like, and now we're just keeping everything level rather than becoming complacent. It's like, right, how can we keep getting better and better?
Yeah. There are those big ups and those big downs, and you just got to be on the right trajectory. But anyway, and again, audiobook read by him. Oh, by the way, I've read and listened to this one.
That is sad.
Audiobook's really good as well.
Nice.
So weirdly, my top two books, both rated 8.6, was Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, about investing, and Will by Will Smith, about Will Smith.
Cool.
Okay. A bonus if you're into fiction. Top two fiction books of the year that I haven't included. Verity by Colleen Hoover. Terrible name, good book. And The Castaways by Lucy Clark.
Nice.
Yeah.
I guess finally, do you? I think there was lots of great information there. Do you have any tips for like someone like me who I see the benefits of reading and listening to more books? I want to do it more. Yeah. What advice have you got for me?
You see the benefits of reading and you want to do it more.
Yeah.
I'd say do it more.
Yes, but
no, I have got tips.
Oh,
really.
have you got tips?
So, one, if you start reading or listening to a book and you don't like it, stop reading or listening to it. So
Simple but effective.
I found this so hard for some reason. I felt like if you start a book, it's like this mission that you have to complete. And I would then stop reading because I'd be like, this is rubbish. And so you wouldn't want to go back to it. And then as soon as I realised if I don't like something, I'll just stop and start a new one. Then I realised, oh yeah, this is enjoyable because then I'm just reading stuff I actually like.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have that, I think. Once they start a book, they think, oh, God, I'm really not into this. I've got to get through it. My advice would just be don't.
Yeah.
Literally stop doing that.
Yeah.
And then you get into a thing where you're only reading things you really enjoy and you read much more. That was a massive switch for me.
Nice.
And the other thing, read one page of a book before bed every single night. Because it's one of those things like Atomic Habits we've said about recently, where it's like, get your gym clothes out, and then that starts the habit of actually getting dressed and actually going to the gym, actually doing a workout. But reading one page, if there's a book that you like, you have to force yourself to read because you're forcing yourself into this habit that you haven't got yet. But I very rarely read a page because I'm reading things I like, and then I read a page and I'm like, oh, I forgot. This is really good and I like this.
Nice.
So if you just say, read a page, and sometimes if you just read one, that's fine. But massively helps my sleep and my enjoyment of reading and what I've learned and stuff.
Good tips.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd. I thought that was really good.
Thanks. I hope you enjoyed it. Lots of weird books. If you're into finance or Will Smith, hopefully a good episode
Give him a listen.
for you. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks, Lloyd. I know it's been mainly you talking, which obviously most people probably won't like as much, but it's good that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But next week's episode, there's we've got a good one actually about fitness trackers.
Yes, that's better than it sounds.
Okay. So yeah, shall we see you in your ears next week?
After an audiobook, maybe.